The Jake Asman Show will begin shortly. Get your questions and comments ready. Super Chats cut the line. Let's go! Time to talk about your Houston Texans.
Can the Texans pull off the upset against the Ravens on Saturday? That and much more is what we will be talking about in today's Jake Asman Show. My guest is one of my good friends, my former producer and an on-air host on ESPN Houston. Andrew Carlson joins the show. So let's hit it and get it started.
Yeah, I'm fired up. The excitement is real.
The Houston Texans select TJ Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State.
It's time for the Jake Asman Show.
And I can't wait to get to work and get to coaching.
With Jake Asman of ESPN Radio.
We just want to make the city of Houston proud.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for the most comprehensive insight on your Houston Texans.
More plays we made, so we'll see.
Here we go. Another day closer to Texans and Ravens on Saturday. And joining me right now is diehard Texan fan and one of my good friends, the great Andrew Carlson of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Andrew, how are you feeling, man? I can't even imagine the emotional roller coaster you have been on this season with this Houston Texans team.
It's been something, man. It's been so exciting. Like, I'm not sure I can fully put into words what it was like just 53 weeks ago now, right? Because we're talking about 53 weeks ago, the Texans lose out on the opportunity to have the number one pick or have control of their draft destiny. And that was one of the lowest points in my Texans fandom. And to go from that to where we are now, it's hard to put into words that you go from such a low to a point where this might be the most confident I have ever been in the franchise and the future of the franchise. It's incredible.
It really is amazing because when you and I were working together, I mean, we were excited about the CJ Stroud selection. We were excited about the Will Anderson pick, but we didn't know. And I remember being on the radio with you being like, well, I like the CJ Stroud selection, but we got to be patient because most rookie quarterbacks, they tend to struggle. In fact, one of the last shows I did on the Wheelhouse was right after CJ Stroud threw an interception on his first drive in the preseason, and Texans fans were panicked then. So to think about where we were then to Stroud not just having a great rookie season, but probably having by far and away the best rookie season we've ever seen, it really is unbelievable when you think back to where this team was to where they are now.
Yeah, it really is incredible. And you mentioned him having the best rookie season potentially of all time. And that's been a topic of discussion over the last couple of weeks. And maybe statistically, he hasn't been the best. And maybe record-wise, he hasn't been the best because, you know, you've got Big Ben, who I think ended up going 13-0 in the regular season with the Steelers and went 15-1 if you include the loss in the AFC title game. But when you combine the two aspects of what CJ Stroud has done from a statistical perspective, plus what he's done with the Texans record-wise, I don't think that there's any debate that can be had that it's the best rookie season for a quarterback in NFL history. And then on top of that, you look at the job that DeMeco Ryans has done. It's the optimism in this city has never been this high for this franchise. And I say that as someone who is a lifelong Houstonian, who has followed this franchise since its inception in the early 2000s. But from the 20 plus years they have been in Houston, I don't believe that there's ever been a point where the optimism and the excitement around this team is as bright as it is right now.
It really is unbelievable. Now, as far as Stroud, and we'll talk more about what he did against the Browns and look ahead to the game on Saturday. But for you as a diehard Texans fan, Andrew, when did you realize CJ Stroud was different?
That's a really good question. I think with 100% certainty, it would probably be the Tampa Bay game. I mean, we had signs earlier before that, okay, we probably have a dude here, but when you lead the sort of drive that he led at the end of that game where you have no timeouts, under a minute left, and you're able to score a touchdown to win the game, it's entirely different. And I would say that without a doubt, that moment is what solidified it for me, that I was like, oh, this isn't just a guy who's going to be a, fringe top 10 quarterback type like a lot of people were projecting. And after the first few games in the season, you felt pretty confident in saying, yeah, CJ Stroud has the arm talent to get him there. But what I saw in that Tampa Bay game and what he did in that final drive really solidified for me that, oh, this isn't just a guy. This is a dude who's going to take you to the highest reaches of the NFL if you surround him with the proper talent and proper coaching.
It's just unbelievable. And, you go and look at his performance against the Browns. I mean, he was flawless. And you would think maybe there could be some nerves. Maybe there'd be a moment or two where he'd look like a rookie, but not at all. And honestly, you could probably argue that that wasn't even his first playoff game, because the game against Indy was winning you're in. It was essentially a playoff game the previous Saturday. Just what he has done in these last two games in particular. I mean, has your optimism for him gone to another level? Your excitement for him based on what you've seen these last two games?
Yeah, look, I'm going to be fully open with you here, Jake, that I'm drinking the Battle Red Kool-Aid as much as I possibly can. By the cupful, I'm taking that stuff down. But I legitimately think he is a future MVP. Like that is the level that he has shown over these last few weeks. And it's not even just the Colts game, to be honest with you. It's also the fact they've been in playoff mode for 3 weeks now. D'Amico Ryan's talked about it leading into the matchup with the Browns, but the Titans game too, I understand the Titans aren't exactly stiff opposition at this point in the season, but the Titans, if they didn't win that game, they were out of the playoff race. So for essentially 3 weeks now, you have been win or go home scenarios. And the maturity that he has shown as a 22-year-old quarterback in the NFL in those situations, it's beyond anything I think you could ever expect from anybody. And we all knew that he had experience playing in big games at Ohio State. That's one of the luxuries you get when you draft a player that's coming from a premier program like Ohio State, right? Is they've got experience playing in those big moments. And he stepped up to the plate in a massive way in their playoff game with Georgia. But seeing it in college and then seeing him do it again and replicate it at the NFL level it's been incredible to watch. Everything we saw in that Georgia game has been put on display and then some in the NFL. And I cannot say enough about how excited I am with the direction that CJ Stroud is taking them. But yeah, that performance against the Browns, sensational. The only thing that I missed was the fact that the Texans blew them out so badly, he didn't get to take more records down in the second half. And he only got to throw 3 or 4 passes in the second half. I just wish he could have gotten to 300 something yards, broken the rookie record for touchdowns, but can't complain about a 45-14 win.
No, I can't complain when your defense scores as many points as the Browns offense.
Yes, the Browns, yeah.
It really is unbelievable, and especially doing it against the Browns, right? Because obviously when the Texans made the Deshaun Watson trade, there was a lot of unknown on what the future would be for Houston, who would be their franchise quarterback. So to come away with Stroud, and the craziest stat from that game on Saturday, the Texans helped their own draft positioning by beating the Browns, because they have the Browns picked this year, the final year of the 3 ones they got in that deal. So it really could not have gone any better. And it just shows you, it all comes down to, whether you want to say luck or whatever, you hit on the quarterback, it changes everything for your franchise.
Yeah, I don't agree with Colin Cowherd on much, but he has been hammering home this point basically all season in every clip I've watched of him where he talks about the Texans. And it's that if you hit on the quarterback and you hit on the head coach, you're going to be in a really good position as a franchise for as long as those two people stick around. And that's exactly what the Texans did this offseason. And they didn't just hit on both of them. They hit home runs, no doubt shots with both those guys. And I don't know what more you can say about what CJ Stroud has done other than any doubts that you could have had about him, any doubts that you could have had about D'Amico coming into the season. I don't think there were many for D'Amico, but with CJ, there were definitely a lot of people who were questioning how he would be able to translate to things at the NFL level. And it's been remarkable to watch basically every question that you had about him in the pre-draft process, he has answered emphatically over the course of the season. And sometimes very early on, right? We had the S2 test where people are wondering, can he process? Bryce Young's a better processor. Bryce Young's better at this. CJ Stroud can't deal with pressure. Well, the Browns bring pressure and pressure the quarterback better than any defense in the NFL. And guess what he did? He shredded them this past Saturday. And it's something that he's been capable of doing this entire season. And it's been so fun to watch someone who is able to answer every single question on the test. Every time that there's a question that is asked of him, CJ Stroud's been able to come up with an answer. And usually it's been the right one.
This game on Saturday against the Ravens, is it house money for you? What are you honestly expecting from the Texans as a 9.5-point underdog in this game against Baltimore?
So I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't, because I thought it was house money against the Browns, and then they went out and did what they did. And that's almost and I don't want to say it's almost, it has raised the expectations for what you can do against Baltimore, right? Because if you sneak by that Browns team, maybe the conversation is a little bit different heading into this game against the Ravens. But when you win in such a forceful and emphatic fashion. It's like, well, shoot, like if they can do that against the number one defense in the NFL, why shouldn't we be optimistic about their ability to go into Baltimore and take down the Ravens? Now, I will say, obviously, it's a much different test in what you're getting with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson and the issues that he's going to present as a quarterback. I have all the love in the world for Joe Flacco and the sort of renaissance tour he was able to have in this back part of the season for the Browns. But Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP award. And what he's able to do with his legs and how it warps a defense is something that the Texans have struggled with, frankly, under DeMeco Ryans. Anthony Richardson tore them up in his lone matchup in, I guess, 2 drives against the Texans earlier in the season. Lamar had a decent amount of success. The Texans were able to keep him relatively in check in week 1, but I don't think the Ravens necessarily knew entirely what they had with this team in week 1. And it's going to be a test unlike what the Texans have faced for the majority of the season, but it's one that I expect them to do a decent job with. If you look at the strengths of each of these teams, they match up fairly well. So for me, the biggest thing is going to be the turnover margin. Ravens lead the NFL in turnover margin, tied with the New York Giants, but they force more turnovers than anybody else in the NFL. Who turns it over the least? The Texans. So for me, it's going to be a matter of who plays to their strengths better. And do I expect that to eventually be the Ravens? Absolutely. They've got the pedigree. They've got the experience. But the Texans have given me more confidence heading into a matchup like that than I ever could have imagined.
I actually look at the matchup, Andrew. I think the Ravens are the better matchup for the Texans than the Chiefs. There's something about having to go to Arrowhead against the defending champs with that quarterback and that coach. And look, the Ravens are outstanding. They were a buzzsaw in the regular season, but they're still unproven come playoff time. Lamar Jackson's playoff numbers are dramatically different than what he's done in the regular season. And the last time the Ravens were in this spot as the 1 seed, they came out flat and lost at home to the Titans. I know that was years ago and Lamar's a better player and all that, but let's not forget Ravens rested their starters the last game of the regular season. They had the bye last week. Texans played great last week. If the Ravens come out flat and the Texans punch them in the mouth, all the pressure's on the Ravens. The Texans don't have any pressure on them. I feel like if you're going to pull off an upset, you might have a better chance against the Ravens, as crazy as that sounds, than the Chiefs.
No, I agree. And it might be too simplistic to say it this way, Jake, but for me, it legitimately comes down to, am I playing Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs at Arrowhead or am I not? And if I have the opportunity to have the not box in that option checked, then I'm absolutely going to do that. Like Lamar Jackson, for as phenomenal as he's been, you're 100% right. His playoff numbers are not great. And I don't want to put too much into that as being a trend just because their offense is so drastically different this year than in years past. They've actually got weapons around him and he's not single-handedly carrying the offense the way he has in years past. But we still don't know what that's going to look like in the playoffs. We still don't know how he's going to respond in that environment, in that atmosphere. And I think that you could probably make a similar argument for Dak Prescott in terms of, oh, this offense is better than it's ever been in terms of the weapons that he's got around them. And then he goes and falls flat on his face simply because of his own issues, not with anything that the rest of the offense was doing. It was just Dak simply not rising to the occasion. And I don't want to put that on Lamar because, look, again, he's going to be a 2-time MVP of this league in the very, very near future. But to act as if that's something that you can just throw out entirely, I don't think you can do that. I think that their offense is obviously revamped and retooled, but I'm going to be very curious to see what Lamar, the quarterback, looks like once we get out there on Saturday.
If the Texans win the game, what needs to happen for them to pull off that upset?
First and foremost, they need to take care of the football. They cannot turn the ball over, and if they do, and if the Ravens are in the positive in the turnover margin, I don't really think the Texans have a shot. I think they've got to turn the Ravens over 1 or 2 times, not turn the ball over themselves. They'll put themselves in a fantastic position to win. The second thing for me is going to be, can the Texans play to their strengths on the defensive side of the football as well? We all know that they've been great stopping the run. It's been a near historic turnaround from how awful their run defense was last year to how it is this year. Can they continue that against the Ravens team that can attack you on the ground in so many different ways with the threat that Lamar Jackson presents? If you're capable of slowing them down on the ground, and look, I know it's an old trope to say you got to force Lamar to beat you with his arm because he's beaten plenty of teams with his arm this season, and he's been phenomenal through the air as well as on the ground. But I still think that if you can force Lamar to have to throw to some of his non-primary targets. So not Zay Flowers and neither of the tight ends, because Isaiah Likely's been great in the absence of Mark Andrews the last few weeks. So if you can somehow shut down both the tight ends and force him to be throwing to the likes of Rashad Bateman, OBJ, maybe a Nelson Aguilar, then I think you've got a really good chance.
He's Andrew Carlson. You can listen to him on ESPN Houston. My name is Jake Asman. Before I get to a couple final questions for Andrew, let's pause the talk all about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy.
Do you want to make money making picks on NFL games? Then you have to try Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. With Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game, you pick between 2 to 5 players and select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stacks. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game. What I love about Underdog is how easy it is to use their app and website. You can also pick between players on your other favorite sports like baseball, basketball, and hockey. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code ASMAN. That's ASMAN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's promo code ASMAN at UnderdogFantasy.com. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org.
Never too early to start looking at some underdog lines here. CJ Stroud, ignore the green screen, 1.5 passing touchdowns is currently juiced over at Underdog. If you think CJ's throwing 2 touchdowns or more, you could play the higher number at 1.25 times. Make sure you watch the show later this week. I will post some official Underdog plays. But if you haven't played Underdog before, definitely check it out and use my promo code ASMAN. For a limited time, Underdog is offering a $100 deposit match, meaning you bet $10. Well, guess what? You have $20. You put 50, you have 100. You put 100, you have 200. Once again, deposit match when you use the promo code ASMAN over at UnderdogFantasy.com. All the info is in the description for this video. I'm going to bring Andrew back on here because here's my question to you, Andrew. And I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but that's what we do. Texans somehow win on Saturday. Somehow win their first ever AFC Championship game. They're headed to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Andrew Carlson, are you going to find a way to take out a small loan so you can watch the Texans in the Super Bowl?
Well, as you know, Jake, from working with me on the Wheelhouse for as long as you did, I've got the Carlson estate. There are no loans that need to be taken out here. We're going to be taking the chopper. We're going to be flying from Houston. All right, maybe not the chopper. Maybe I'm driving from Houston to Vegas. But I feel like you have to find some way to put your butt in that seat because what a remarkable, remarkable run that would be to go from plus 20,000 at some point earlier on in this offseason. They had the worst odds in all of the NFL to go from that to playing in Vegas for the Super Bowl. It would be, I don't know how I could call myself a Texans fan and not try and be there.
You have to figure it out. I mean, the Carlson estate, maybe you call up, Mattress Mac and basically beg him to provide some cash for you. I mean, we know he likes to throw the money around on sports media talent.
That's true. Look, there's got to be some way to make it happen, right? And that's at the end of the day, that's all it is. You find some way to make it happen because that would be a historic moment for this franchise and for the city, frankly.
I mean, it would be unbelievable. Obviously, just getting to a championship game would be the first time they've done that. But I'm with you, man. It's house money. Look, you don't want to get embarrassed on Saturday, but if they lose a close game, I don't think there's any Texan fan that's going to be that upset. What a year it's been.
Yeah, and I would be stunned, to be honest with you, Jake, if they got embarrassed. Because if there's one thing that CJ Stroud has done consistently this entire year, it's been he has the ability to keep the team in games because of the composure that he shows and how mature he is as a quarterback. And for them to be just blown out against the Ravens, I think it would take an implosion that I just don't really foresee given how this team has really composed themselves all year long.
Andrew, where can my audience find you if they want to follow along the content and the great work that you produce?
So I'm the producer for Connor and Beard, which is middays on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. I'm a very consistent on-air voice on that show. I also host The Bullpen with Sean Mapes and Brian McDonald, also of the company. And that's on Saturdays, usually from noon to 2. Sometimes those pesky Aggies take us off with whatever athletic endeavors they've got going on. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Carlson Radio. So if you want any of my musings about what the Texans have going on or a occasional Rockets or Astros rant, that's where you can be found.
Check it out. He's Andrew Carlson. My name is Jake Asman. Texans fans, thanks for watching. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Aaron Wilson and I will be dropping another episode of Inside the Houston Texans before the game on Saturday. We'll have a post-game show as well. And if you missed it, Aaron and I went live right after the Bills-Steelers game wrapped up last night for instant reaction to the Texans and the Ravens. So check out that video on the channel if you missed it yesterday. Andrew, can't thank you enough for coming on, man. Thanks so much.
Jake, it was a pleasure, man. You know I'm here anytime you want it.
He's Andrew Carlson. My name is Jake Asman. Thanks for tuning in. Texans fans, be on the lookout for more content throughout the week. And then, of course, as you heard me just say, another episode of Inside the Texans with Aaron and I will drop on the channel before the game on Saturday. See you, everybody.